This is war. Map. Russian forces. New successes near Kupyansk. In the first half of May on the Kupyansk direction, successful actions of Russian units continue. There are significant gains in the control zones and an improvement in the tactical situation. The AFU is being pushed back in 7 populated areas, and the armed forces of Ukraine are losing positions near Oskol. In Kupyansk, the presence of the Russian armed forces is strengthening. Russian assault groups are expanding the zone of presence in the city, but full control is still far off. On the eastern bank, Russian fighters are again firmly controlling the territory of the sugar factory and have managed to occupy part of Kucherovka. The rest of the village is in the so-called gray zone. The AFU has been driven out of most of Petropavlovka. A limited presence of Ukrainian formations remains only on its southern outskirts, where leaflets with calls to surrender are still being dropped periodically. The populated area of Podoli, along with the adjacent forests, has become an arena of clashes of small groups. Neither the Russian nor the Ukrainian forces can stay there for long. However, in Kuryovka and Kuryovka I, Russian units have managed to gain a foothold in the remaining territory of both settlements. From Kovsharovka and Novosino, battles also continue. However, the successes there are somewhat more modest, as the Russian assault units have to overcome large open spaces, which in modern conditions is almost a more dangerous task than a firefight, which is becoming less and less nowadays. On the eastern Zaporizhia direction, the intensity of battles in the vicinity of Vozdvizhenka is increasing, and counterattacks are being recorded on several sections at once. From the southern entrance to the village of Rozdestvenka, Rizdvyanka, footage of a UAV strike on the AFU's equipment has appeared. Earlier, the Ukrainian formations carried out several attacks here, so it can be stated that the battle for the settlement is continuing, and attacks on armored vehicles still occur occasionally. To the east of Vozdvizhenka, the Russian armed forces were able to reoccupy several forest strips between the railway and the river Gaichur to the west of Priluki. Meanwhile, to the south, there are already signs of AFU attacks on the outskirts of Eleno-Konstantinovka, where a small group of AFU was blocked and destroyed by a drone in one of the buildings. As we said, fierce counterattacks are continuing between the river and the railway track. To the north of Tsvetkovo, the Russian armed forces units were also able to occupy several forest strips, and beyond Upper Tersa, heavy battles are continuing. With the end of the truce, the intensity of battles on the direction has noticeably increased, and apparently, the Russian armed forces are now restoring positions behind Gaichur. Earlier, the AFU was able to repel the Russian units behind the railway and occupy several strongholds with frequent counterattacks. And now, as the AFU's forces are exhausted, the troops of the Vostok Group are again pushing the front westward. In Konstantinovka, Russian forces continue to advance. The South Group of troops is gradually increasing the intensity of offensive actions in the Konstantinovka direction. During the ceasefire, the AFU was able to increase its presence in the Chasovoye Gorge and Krasny. And now, judging by the emerging objective control footage, the Russian armed forces are trying to cut off the Ukrainian formations from land supply there. Russian armed forces assault teams are passing through Novodmitrovka and reaching the outskirts of Molocharka. It would be inappropriate to talk about any control here, for the simple reason that there is still no opportunity to consolidate in the adjacent territory of Konstantinovka and in the strongholds to the east. As we have repeatedly noted earlier, the fact of an assault does not mean control. The assault troops risk either being hit by drones or encountering a counter-raid by the AFU, which is taking advantage of the large number of reinforcements amassed in Konstantinovka. Not infrequently, AFU cleanup teams themselves become targets for Russian drone operators, but the current format of combat operations does not allow for a significant increase in the control zone. As for Krasny and the Ukrainian-controlled areas of Chasovoye Gorge, the situation there remains difficult. Ukrainian formations are deploying their drone operators and repeaters there, which not only enhance the stability of the defense, but also allow them to strike at the logistics of the Russian armed forces in the adjacent territories. New advances in Slavyansk. From the Slavyansk direction, evidence of new successes of Russian units from the south grouping of forces continue to emerge steadily. The armed forces of the Russian Federation are approaching Rai-Alexandrovka. Fighters of the 88th Motor Rifle Brigade are fighting to storm the forest strips on the approaches to this populated area. Given that such footage is being posted with a significant delay, it is reasonable to assume that the armed forces of the Russian Federation are achieving much greater successes in this area. In parallel with the attacks on the line of contact, the number of strikes on Nikolaevka and Orekhovatka, through which the AFU supplies its forward positions to the east of the Severny Donets-Donbass Canal, is increasing. The now dried-up canal actually serves as a lengthy anti-tank ditch with concrete walls, which is well fortified by the AFU. And to develop assault actions towards the Slavyansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration, it will be necessary to reach the ditch and cross it over a wide area. Beyond the ditch, it's not all clear either. There are many fortifications of the armed forces of Ukraine there, some of which have been equipped since 2014, and work is currently underway to fortify the cities as well. The situation is largely related to the development of the situation on the neighboring Limansk direction, where much depends on the possibility of the west grouping of forces and the outcome of the battles in the vicinity of Svyatogorsk and Liman. Fortunately, there have been reports of at least local successes of the armed forces of the Russian Federation from there recently. Until next update.